How's it going, man? You got time for a 5-minute interview? You got time for a 5-minute interview?
Sure.
Cool. Thanks for stopping, man.
No problem.
You cool if I record it?
Sure.
Okay. Cool. What was your name?
Eric.
Eric? Eddie.
Eddie?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Is it E-R-I-C?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So what I like to do is I have interviews with just random people for 5 minutes, and I like to talk about a belief that you hold that you really think is true, and then I just ask questions to uncover how you concluded it is true and your confidence level in it.
Okay.
So like some examples are, I believe karma is real. I saw a ghost. I believe prayer works. I believe in a God. I believe in aliens. I talked to someone about that too. So, but typically, the conversations are more interesting if it's something that you really believe is true and it like affects your actions.
Okay. Well, for one, I believe in karma.
Okay.
Sometimes I do like bad things to other people, and then the next day, something bad happens to me.
Okay.
And but when I do, when I do good things, sometimes good things happen to me too. For example, yesterday, on my way to work,
Mm-hmm.
I got a speeding ticket, and I think that's one of the reasons why. Because I believe myself to be a really good driver, but then ironically, yesterday I got a speeding ticket. So I was going like 13 over the speed limit, and then really that's not good driver's skills. And then I also believe in the Yin Yang, because in addition to the speeding ticket, which is bad luck, I consider, I landed a date with one of this cute girl from my work. So that's a balance of negative and positive.
Okay. Do you want to focus more on the yin and yang or the karma?
I guess on the Yin Yang.
Okay. So, I think see if I can illustrate it like this. I'm really bad at it, but it's something like that, right?
Yeah.
That thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like a balance of good and bad, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How does that work?
Honestly, I don't know. But I've learned about it in like world history class and stuff. Like, I think it originated from like Buddhism, or no, not Buddhism, Sikhism. I don't remember, to be honest, but it's really a positive of good and bad. And like when you draw the circle as like a thing's kind of like split in half, and then one side is black, which represents bad luck, and then the other is white. But then you see the dots inside. Like the dot inside the black part is a white,
Okay.
and then the dot inside the white part is black. So I guess it's I think that represents something like, there's negative and positives, and there's positives and the negatives.
Okay. So what would be an example in your everyday life of yin and yang working?
Let's go back to the speeding ticket.
Okay.
Remember, 2 years ago, I got my first speeding ticket, which caused me to get my first job because my parents didn't want to pay for it. So, in that instance, I learned the value of money, which is really important in today's society. At the same time, I had to learn to take responsibility for my actions.
Okay, I gotcha. So you're saying the negative experience of getting a speeding ticket caused the positive experience of learning the value of money and getting a job.
And of course, safety.
Safety, okay. In that example, let's say that instead of you finding a job, let's say you didn't find a job, and you ultimately never paid off that ticket, and it led to more negative outcomes because you never paid it. What would that mean?
I guess in that context, it would mean that I'd still learn something from it, like don't speed, of course, but of course, like don't act recklessly in life, because that could affect everything. Just one reckless behavior can affect everything. So with that example, I guess you learn you can't be reckless.
Okay. So as long as you are learning something, then there's a positive to it? Okay. In that situation, can you think of a scenario in which the yin yang thing wouldn't work or wouldn't be demonstrated?
Okay. Let's say that you were born in a wealthy family and you didn't experience anything negative. And this is like a perfect scenario. So like you're born, let's say, you're wealthy, no problems at all, no nothing. So just pure positive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you wouldn't learn anything about like morals. You wouldn't learn anything about values. I guess if you don't experience like what's it called? If you don't experience like ruthless behavior, like pride, everything goes well for you. You'll never learn what it's like to be like ruthless. And then I don't even know where I'm going with this.
I think I understand what you're saying. And just correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that if you don't ever experience bad things, you won't learn the lesson it could give you, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay. In that example, do you think that it's possible for someone to live their life, living in riches and never having to experience those things?
I think it's impossible to live just in one side of the yin yang. You throughout your life you'll experience bad and good.
Okay.
I think that example I came up with is impossible in today's world.
Okay.
Like even like, for example, our president. He built his wealth. He's net worth $6 billion, but of course he had to face failure when some of his businesses went bankrupt. But then he learned like, oh, I can't operate his business this way if I want to start another business. If I follow this model, it's going to fail again, so I have to come up with something different.
Okay. Is it possible for, let me ask it this way. What would it look like if someone had more yin than yang or more yang than yin? Is that, like, what does that look like?
What does it look like? That's a good question. So let's say someone experiences more good than bad. I think eventually that person would eventually the bad will catch up to that person. Like if they're experiencing so much good luck, it's going to build up, and then a bunch of bad's going to come in their way.
Okay.
Because they're in a place where they think that nothing's going to happen, and then the worst timing ever happens, and then all this bad stuff happens.
Okay.
And they're not ready for it because they haven't experienced what it's like.
I gotcha. Okay. So in that example of having too much good and not enough bad, if you were to discover that someone lived their life with more yin and not yang, and they never balanced out, if you came across that knowledge for however you would that mean that yin and yang doesn't work the way you thought it did, or what would you conclude from that if that were the case?
Well, excuse me. You really couldn't tell at that point because they still have the rest of their lives. But let's say if this person's like old and they're like late 90s, and they experience more good than bad, I guess yin yang, maybe doesn't work. I'm not sure.
I guess what I'm getting at is how would you discover that yin and yang works in a different way? What is your feedback loop to say, okay, that isn't 50-50,
No.
Like how would if you were wrong about how yin and yang worked, or wrong about it working at all, how would you go about discovering it?
I guess through experience.
Okay. Like what experience would you accept that would cause you to doubt that yin and yang worked?
For example, I had a few friends in high school that, they were like in the top 10 people in the graduating class. They got accepted to their dream school. They got a bunch of scholarships. Nothing seemed wrong with them. So I guess that's one way I could find out that yin yang doesn't work, because everything's going so well for them.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you compare it to somebody else, they'll take out like a few $1,000s in debt for college, and they don't go to their dream school, so they settle for like TJC or T Tyler, and next thing you know, they get kicked out of their house. Oh, for example, my friend Ryan got kicked out of his house because he said he was having issues with his stepdad.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to go to E.T. Tyler, but his parents wouldn't pay for it, of course. So he decided to go to the Air Force. But it would be a while before he went to the Air Force, so he was just out on his own, paying rent and stuff. He told me that he was living in the shack, or not a shack, but it was like a house with no AC. It was like in the middle of the summer.
Man,
yeah.
That's rough.
As you compare my friend Ryan to my friend, her name's Alyssa, I think. She was the number 1 in our class. She went to Rice, scholarship, everything. Alyssa hasn't experienced like enough bad to know how to appreciate things like AC and money.
Yeah.
My friend Ryan's over here working like 2 jobs just to have a roof over his head, and to have his car break down. But then luckily he went to the Air Force and gave me his bike.
So seeing more of that experience, would that cause you to doubt yin and yang? If you experience more of that, I don't want to say inequality, but just different experiences that people go through?
I guess so. Why? I guess so, but I'm like, I turned 20 this year, so like, I don't have that much experience to say like, oh, definitely or definitely not.
Yeah.
But I would say maybe I would doubt it, maybe not.
What would have to happen for you to completely lose the belief?
If I live the rest of my life without experiencing good or bad things, like just one sole thing happening at once, like let's say good luck for the rest of my life.
Okay.
Or bad luck for the rest of my life. I'm like no good out of that.
Okay. How do you determine whether an experience is good and bad, and how much good and bad? Like, how would you, like, let's say you, that speeding ticket example, sorry, ant was biting me. That speeding ticket example where you learned a lesson about money and safety. Let's say it's the same thing happened to someone else, and they felt it was more yang than yin, or they felt it was like, not a good experience at all. Is there a way for us to determine the correct measure of yin and yang between you two, if you had the same experience?
Well, I don't think there's a correct way. It's usually up to interpretation. Like I interpret, let's say, if my boss gives me 40 hours, I consider that good because more money, But if I put 40 hours in a week, which I usually put in 30 hours in a week, but if I get 40 hours in a week, that means more money. That'll be a good thing. Or let's see, another example of a good thing. you want like your dream job. Like let's say if you're studying civil engineering and you get offered an internship for a few months, and after those few months you get you ascend into like that actual profession you want, like let's say water resources engineering or something like that, and that would be a good thing. And I guess like to put it in general terms, like how to determine good things is just how happy you feel.
Okay. If how happy we feel about a certain experience can vary from person to person, and there really is no way for us to accurately measure the yin and the yang, is it possible that what the balance of yin and yang could be left up to interpretation, and we can't really know if it's a balance?
I guess so. Yeah. Really, we just can't. Really, you just can't. We can't put a definite measure on yin yang. It's totally up to interpretation, because like I said, if one of my friends gets 40 hours at work, for example, they don't like to work, so that looks like that for them it would be a bad thing. But for me it would be a good thing, because
Yeah.
money.
Have you ever heard the phrase, one man's garbage is another man's, one man's garbage is another man's treasure?
Yes.
So it's like, yeah. Cool. Well, that concludes the talk. I appreciate you. We went over 5 minutes, so I appreciate you hanging out. So I guess one last question is, having had the talk, are you more confident that yin and yang is a thing and it's happening, or are you less confident, or you're just the same?
I'd say I'm still about the same, because
Okay.
I feel like I just presented what I feel about the yin yang, but overall I feel about the same about the yin yang. I still think it's a thing, but along with I believe in God and Jesus,
Okay.
So I think it integrates with each other somehow.
I gotcha. Cool. All right, man. Yeah, maybe next time if I'm here and I see you, we can talk about another belief or anything like that. But I don't want to take up too much of your time. So I do have a card if you wanted to reach out, and if you think of something else you wanted to have a chat, you can email me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If I'm ever come across something, I'll hit you up.
Cool, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, Eric.
No problem.
All right.
Have a nice day.
You too, man.
Thank you.
It's getting hot.